This is Rock Entertainment Sports Network. Your teams, your town, your home.
Welcome everybody to one final edition for the 24-25 season of Monsters OT. We are presented by Century Federal Credit Union and only here on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. With Brad Thiessen, I'm Tony Brown, and we are going to wrap up a season that was memorable in a number of different ways today. We'll also hear who's hot in the Calder Cup playoffs, courtesy of Nick Blazer, and of course our True North Convenience Stores Monsters Alumni segment is going to send us off into the off season. But we begin the show, as we always do, with headlines. All right, Brad, let's get into the series that ended Cleveland's season in the North Division semifinals. 4 games is what it took for the Laval Rocket to knock out the Monsters, 3-1. And I thought we could break down this series kind of game by game and talk about the buzzsaw that Cleveland ran into in the Rocket, who were the top team in the American Hockey League in the regular season. So let's start with game 1. That took place, of course, in Cleveland, and with a 2-3 series format, a huge opportunity, Brad, for the Monsters on home ice to sort of grab control of the series. However, they dropped that first game 3-2, despite multi-point showings from Joseph Labate and Trey Fix-Wolanski and some vintage goaltending from Jet Greaves.
Yeah, coming off a series win against the Marlies, the Rocket provided a bit of a different animal for the Monsters. Definitely a bit harder on the forecheck, more physical team. So I thought the Monsters come out in game 1 and started well, just couldn't quite finish it off in the third period.
So the Monsters at that point down 1-0 in the series, and of course, again, playing on home ice to start, a huge advantage that Cleveland couldn't quite break through as they led into game 2, and that one went even further into the Rockets' column. The final was 4-0 in the second game of the series. Jet Greaves made 25 saves, but to head home for Laval, up 2-0, they were feeling good.
Yeah, that second game was, I think, really what Laval was all about. They kind of demoralized the Monsters in that one and kind of took control of that game, just really imposed their will and forecheck, and by the end of that one, it was clear they were the better team in those first 2 games, but Monsters regrouped for game 3.
They certainly did, so a chance to get back on the Schneid, on the road at Place Belle in Laval. And one thing that is true about playing in that building, Brad, is while it's hostile territory for the visiting teams, there's so much energy in that building that it's easy for both sides to get up, and the Monsters certainly did, en route to their only win in the series. It was a 3-1 final score, and keyed by that third line. Dylan Gambrell scored twice, Roman Achon had 3 points, and Luca Pinelli a couple of assists too, and this might have been Jet Greaves' best game of the season, 36 saves in victory.
Yeah, it was. Season on the line. Jet came up big for the Monsters. Like you said, Place Belle, awesome atmosphere for the guys. Laval with the goalie change to Primo after the first 2 with Jacob Fowler getting the wins. And you see Gambrell getting a big goal here in the end of the second period, putting the Monsters up 1-0. And just a real great, gritty effort on the road to pick up that win.
And they went back to Fowler in game 4. But what did you make of that decision to go to Primo? Of course, he was the guy that led the Rocket in net throughout the regular season. But with Fowler winning the first 2 games, I, for one, was a little surprised they made the change.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Primo was 21-2 for them in the regular season. Then had the call up to Montreal because of injuries for the Canadians in the playoffs, giving Fowler the opportunity to play those first 2 games. But I know me personally, I wouldn't love to lose my job after playing a full season and winning 21 games and not getting that chance to go back in that in the playoffs. So that's kind of where I saw it.
Fun fact, between the regular season and the playoffs, there was only one team that defeated Caden Primo at Place Belle, and it was the Monsters in game 3, and then, of course, in the regular season in late March. So Primo perhaps a bad matchup against Cleveland. But at that point, the series 2-1 with Laval leading. We head to game 4, which was on Tuesday, May the 6th. And this was where the Rocket really flexed their muscles again in a 4-1 victory that ended the season and ended the series too. Monsters just could not get over the hump in this game.
Yeah, this was one where the score could have been a lot worse, I think, without the play of Jet Greaves, a bunch of his saves here. And Monsters also playing without Denton Matejchuk in this game, which is huge. Such a big part of that back end, and when you don't have him in the lineup, it's a big hole. So see a nice shot here by Delbel Balouz to get the Monsters on the board and make it 3-1, but it was a game where it didn't ever feel like it was all that close.
Yeah, it's a good point on Matejchuk. That made that game 3 win for Cleveland even more impressive. Matejchuk was injured early in the first period of that game, and the rest of the defensive core really raised their level and gave the Monsters 1 win. But you see the handshakes there. That signifies the end of the season for one of these teams, in this case Cleveland, as the Rocket are now still playing against Rochester in the North Division Final, which is a best-of-5 game series as well. So let's take a look at the remaining teams that are competing for the Calder Cup here as we take a look at the bracket, and we're into the division finals now, Brad. So you've got Laval and Roch at the time of this taping tied at 1 game apiece. Hershey and Charlotte sees the Checkers with a 2-game 10-0 series lead, a chance to close it out. Of course, the Bears faced that situation in the first round, too. Then you've got Milwaukee and Texas. That'll be a great series. Colorado and Abbotsford. I believe both those series are tied at 1 game apiece there. But for you, Brad, who you watching as we're down to the, Elite 8 in the AHL?
Yeah, one thing I noticed there is 1 versus 2 in all 4 of those series. The best teams have risen to the top here in the playoffs. Colorado, Abbotsford. I know Abbotsford has a really good lineup, good goaltending there, as well as my hometown. A lot of family and friends back there watching the Canucks, hoping they go on a run. But it'll be fun to see who comes out of the Laval-Rochester series, just because you've played against them so much during the season. And 2 teams that I thought that when the Monsters played them throughout the year and in the playoffs, obviously with Laval, 2 of the better teams in the league.
I really like that Milwaukee-Texas matchup, too. That's a great series between teams that have seen each other in recent seasons in the playoffs there. I've got my money on Texas in that one. Here's to hoping Charlotte can knock off Hershey, as they were really good in the regular season, I thought. And, of course, tough to bet against Rochester for me, just with the goaltending of Devin Levi, who's been outstanding.
Yeah, as they have, top to bottom, a real skilled, talented lineup. Really good on the back end. I think 1 through 6, they're able to really handle the Laval forecheck and break pucks out against them. So see how they do on the road in Laval.
All right, let's take a look now, Brad, on headlines at some major accomplishments for the Monsters this year as we kind of cap off this 24-25 regular season. Let's begin with what was really crazy at the time, a 10-game winning streak in the month of November. That set a franchise record and really set the tone for the entire season.
Yeah, it feels like so long ago talking about that winning streak, but just an awesome streak for the Monsters, something you don't see a whole lot, double-digit wins in a row, but it was one of those times of the year where it was, maybe they didn't deserve to win some of those games, but you just find a way, and it was a fun streak to be a part of.
So that was team history right there again, 10 games consecutively in the win column there. It's never happened in the history of the club. Another big achievement this year. I think a lot of credit goes to the coaching staff here, but the Monsters, for the first time ever in the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. A lot of teams in this league, in any league, sort of take the postseason for granted, but that says something. The Monsters, with all the competitive teams they've had over the years, they've never gone back-to-back, and they did this year.
Yeah, it was a great accomplishment for this group, and again, just like last year, coming down to the last weekends of the season to clinch, but great for these young kids to play in meaningful games down the stretch and then into the playoffs as well. Just an awesome time of year to be playing these big games.
And of course, another big achievement for the team, really for the organization, for the whole city, the fact that for the 3rd straight season, the Monsters led the AHL in average attendance, hosting over 11,400 fans per game here at Rocket Arena, and of course, over 411,000 fans altogether this season. It's National Hockey League type stuff right there.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, every time you come to the rink here in Cleveland for a game, you're getting a great atmosphere, a great crowd, NHL type, like you said, and the players love it, coaches love it. It just brings up the energy every night, whether you're on a Wednesday night or a Saturday night. It's an awesome place to play.
Real quick on headlines here. Now let's look ahead, Brad, into the future. We can say with some certainty that the coaching staff will look pretty darn similar to what it looked like last year going into next season. Let's talk about some of the players, though, that are going to be coming back for the Monsters. Who are you watching to take a big step next year? For me, Luca Pinelli's at the top of the list.
Yeah, Luca Pinelli obviously showed great at the end of the year in his stint after his junior career. Guillaume Richard, I thought, stepped in, did a really nice job, especially in the playoffs there, and stepped into a big role. I think a guy like Gavin Brindley, coming from college, who's a second-round pick, who maybe at times struggled this year and didn't meet his expectations. And it's a hard league to jump into and really feel like you're going to just continue on from what you did in college to pro. And I think you learned a lot this year, and I think I expect him to take a big jump next year.
Some other names expected to be back, including Max McHugh, and here's one I'm really watching to take a huge step next year. He's going to have to be a big leader on this team, and that's Stan Svozil, who's been around showing his tools offensively here for years, but now he gets a chance to step in and maybe be the guy on the blue line.
Yeah, big summer for Stan, too, just to kind of get himself ready to go for next year to take advantage of that opportunity. He's such a smart player, reads the game really well, and he steps up in the biggest moments in the big games, and he was really good in the playoffs for the Monsters.
With that, we'll take a quick break. We've got plenty more Monsters OT presented by Century Federal Credit Union coming up right after this break on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. Welcome back to Monsters OT, presented by Century Federal Credit Union, only here on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. I'm Tony Brown. Coming up, we're going to see who's hot across the Calder Cup playoffs with Nick Blazer. Then it's our Monsters Alumni segment presented by True North Convenience Stores, and a special one today. But for right now, let's keep it rolling here alongside Brad Thiessen. And Brad, let's talk about some of the top moments this season for the Monsters. We already covered this first one, but let's go back and recognize again a 10th straight win for Cleveland in November, which set a new club record. And anytime you're setting club records, you're setting the table really for a strong season.
Yeah, you really are. You think about those 10 wins and the 20 points garnered there, those come in real handy at the end of the season. So it was a fun streak to be a part of. I remember being not just one guy that was contributing, it was different guys on different nights, and I think that really made everyone feel like they were a part of the team really early in the year. Yeah,
it's good to play well, but to get the results, that's what you need to build the confidence. The Monsters certainly had that early this year. Let's talk about 3 hat tricks that were scored by Monsters players this season, beginning right out of the gate with Luca Del Bel Belluz on the road in Hershey. It was the second game of the season, and what a year he had. It started quickly. I remember sort of realizing all the ground he'd covered heading into the year and wondering what was ahead after a performance like that.
Yeah, I mean, he had a great season, and that kind of set the table for it, really solidifying himself as a top goal scorer in this league, and that was, a sign of things to come for sure in that first weekend.
Second hat trick of the season for the Monsters came in January, and it went to Hunter McCown, another guy who showed a lot of flashes of development and progress made in his game as the season wore on, but he scored 3 on January the 22nd against Chicago.
Yeah, you remember that game. It was a 5-1 Chicago lead in the third period thanks to a goal from center ice on Jet Greaves, and then all of a sudden it's the Hunter McCown show the rest of the way, and ended up in an overtime loss, but it was fun to see Hunter be rewarded for some of the work that he's put in this year, and well deserving of a hat trick.
And then one of my favorite storylines the entire season was the campaign put together by Roman Ashan. Needed a tryout to be a part of the team early in the year, earned himself an American League deal. Career year for him, and he really capped it off with a hat trick in Pucks and Pierogies weekend, which was memorable for a number of different reasons there. We'll talk about that in just a second. But great for him in what was a blowout win for Cleveland on the 4th of April to get that hat trick. And again, just put a cherry on top of a year to remember.
Yeah, great season for Roman. Really earned everything he got this season for sure. He worked so hard on and off the ice, and to see him score the amount of goals that he did this year was maybe a little bit unexpected for everyone else, but I think for him, he believed that he had that in him.
So let's keep it moving now with another memorable part of the season, of course, and it's appropriate coming off these highlights. We talk about Pucks and Pierogies weekend, 2 wins against Wilkes-Barre Scranton in April, a 10-1 combined score for the Monsters in those victories. 25,000 plus fans combined were there to watch it, and of course the pierogi eating contest, which made television history. I'm not sure in a good way, but certainly a memorable weekend, and it's what the Monsters are all about. The results on the ice, yeah, but the product for the fans, the environment, the jerseys, it was peak Monsters hockey. Now let's keep things moving along with another really signature moment from the season. For me, this was really fun to be a part of, to watch, to witness. Trey Fix-Wolanski in December scored his 100th goal as a member of the Monsters, and a guy that's earned so many accolades. This was just another one of those classic highlights that he can add to his reel from his time in Cleveland.
Yeah, he's a big game player and big moment guy. Loves playing on home ice. It's great that that goal was scored on home ice because he's done so much damage here and has that connection with the fans. And it was a cool moment for him, and well-deserved honor there.
Yeah, he set the team record on the road in Syracuse, a couple of years back, and then this year to get number 100, something no Monster has ever done before. To do it at Rocket Arena was really cool. And then finally, the last big moment to watch here, Brad, came in double overtime in Game 2 against Toronto in that first-round series as the Monsters on the road turned to James Malatesta, and in double OT, he punched their ticket into that series against Laval, which ultimately didn't go Cleveland's way. But playoff hockey means overtime hockey, and it was really fun to watch.
Yeah, it was, and a culmination of a good series win against the Marlies on the road. Just think the Monsters really had their way with the Marlies, obviously, the past few years, and carried that over into the playoffs with a big win in double overtime.
Well, with that, we will take another quick break here on Monsters OT, but plenty more show is coming up, and it's all presented by Century Federal Credit Union, only here on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. Welcome back to Monsters OT. We are presented by Century Federal Credit Union, only here on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. Tony Brown back with you, but right now it's time to see who's hot across the Calder Cup playoffs, and for that we turn to Nick Blazer.
All right, appreciate it, Tony. Welcome, everyone, to another segment of Who's Hot Around the American Hockey League, the Calder Cup Playoffs edition. I'm Nick Blazer, kicking things off with the Atlantic Division final matchup. It'll be the number 1 Hershey Bears taking on the number 2 Charlotte Checkers. Charlotte able to take both of the first games there. Game 3 coming up this Wednesday in Hershey to see if the Checkers are able to close out that series in a sweep fashion. Both teams able to beat their division semifinal opponents in 5 games. Charlotte over the Providence Bruins and Hershey over the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. Moving on to the North Division finals now, the Laval Rocket up against the number 2 seeded Rochester Americans. That series is tied 1-1 heading into Game 3, which will also take place this Wednesday in Laval. The Americans were able to sweep the Syracuse Crunch 3-0 in their best-of-5 series with scores of 3-2 and 2 4-0 shutouts. Obviously, a lot of credit to their goaltender Devin Levi for those shutout victories, 30-plus saves in both of those contests. Moving on to the Central Division Finals now, the Milwaukee Admirals taking on the Texas Stars. That series tied at 1 game apiece. Game 3 happening in Milwaukee this week. Texas able to sweep the Grand Rapids Griffins in the division semis, with that series winner being a 5-4 double overtime victory on home ice. And the Milwaukee Admirals able to come back from a 2-0 deficit to Rockford, came back 3 unanswered victories, a 6-2 win, 3-2 win, and 4-3 overtime victory to win in 5 games over the Ice Hogs. On to the Pacific Division now to wrap things up. The Colorado Eagles taking on the Abbotsford Canucks. That series tied at 1 game apiece as well, in Game 3 happening in Loveland, Colorado this week. Abbotsford so far able to beat the Roadrunners 2-1 in the opening round of the playoffs. We're also able to knock Coachella Valley in 4 games in their division semis. Colorado so far, they had that bye round due to topping the Pacific Division this regular season, was able to take down the San Jose Barracuda in 4 games in their division semi-series. Now do it for our final segment of Who's Hot Around the American Hockey League with me, Nick Blazer. Thank you for joining me, and we'll be back with more Monsters OT right after this.
Back to cap off our final episode of the season of Monsters OT, presented by Century Federal Credit Union here on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. It's time now for our Monsters Alumni segment, which is presented by True North Convenience Stores, fast, friendly, clean. Let's begin with a couple of guys here, Brad, that maybe they're not officially alumni yet, but doesn't it feel like a page is turning here? We'll begin with the franchise himself, Trey Fix-Wolanski, who spent parts of 6 seasons with the Monsters from 2019 until the present. He's, of course, as of now, an unrestricted free agent, but the resume speaks for itself. Leads the team in all-time Monsters history in goals, assists, points, power play goals, game-winning goals, and single-season scoring. And this is a guy that has meant everything to Cleveland, and you can tell Cleveland has meant everything to him.
Yeah, it really has, and it's fun to see just how he's progressed. I was still playing. He was sitting right next to me in the locker room when he first got here, and I remember just the energy and just the skill set that he had when he first got here, and knowing that as a player, and then seeing as he's grown and developed and matured over these 6 years, and he's meant a lot to this team.
He's been a great deal, and you just hear it from his own mouth. The city is where he really grew up when he arrived as a young player and now is a proven veteran in this league. So from all of us with the Monsters to Fixie, all I can say is thank you for all the memories and all the fun times. All right, let's also talk about another guy who may have played his final game as a member of the Monsters, and he really punched his own ticket out of town based on the way he played at the NHL level at the end of this regular season, really throughout his career. I'm talking, of course, about the other pillar and icon of this most recent era of the Monsters, Jet Greaves. 4 seasons with the team from 2021 until now, leads the Monsters' all-time record book in terms of games played by a goaltender, minutes played by a goalie, goaltending wins, saves, and of course his 30 wins last season, a single-season club record. Another guy that just in every way, shape, and form epitomizes what Monsters hockey has become, and hopefully the Monsters helped him on his path to where he wants to go, which is the peak of the industry.
Yeah, you don't always think of goalies as leaders, but that was what Jet was with his team. I mean, he built himself into a leader because of how he carried himself on and off the ice for this team and in this city, and was someone that all the guys looked up to in the locker room because of that. And it was just so fun to watch the development process happen with him, and he was so good about just like being disciplined and making sure he was waiting for his opportunities, and when he got his opportunities, he took advantage of them.
Yeah, he was just a magnetic sort of presence for fans, for staff members, for the rest of his teammates, for the entire city, and so to Jet and to Trey, we say thank you for everything. And I just want to remind the American League fans, this is a good thing. This is what this league is all about. Guys are here, you enjoy them while they are, and then you wish them all the best wherever they go next. So to both of those icons, truly, of Monsters hockey, Trey and Jet, all the best to you guys going forward. For that, that's going to do it for another edition, another season, in fact, of Monsters OT, which was all presented by Century Federal Credit Union. Lots of thank yous to hand out, of course, to Leo Simone and Jeremy Hawks, who really steward our show throughout the season. We thank those guys. Brad, thanks to you for all the laughs this year. Of course, thanks to Nick Blazer as well, the rest of our outstanding crew. We want to say thank you to True North Convenience Stores, to Century Federal Credit Union, and most of all, to you, the fans. I'm Tony Brown. Thank you for making the Monsters what they are, and this has been another season of Monsters OT, only here on your home for Monsters hockey. Have a great summer on Rock Entertainment Sports Network.